when this bottle is open because depending on the type of tube feed I am running, they can either expire within 4 to 24 hours. So I would just do that for the next shift. It would also be in my notes as well, though. So I'm just going to put on some gloves. As of right now, Mrs. Nazareth is sitting at a 90-degree position, which I would want to make sure if she was in bed that she were sitting upright as well for this specific procedure. And what I'm going to do first is I want to measure the nasogastric tube. So I want to take the tube and I want to measure from her nose to her ear and then down to her xiphoid process. So it would be right about here if I were going to be doing that, and I would just make note of that, and I would get a piece of tape and I would just put a piece of tape here. So I'm just going to do that real quick. If I can find the end of it. There we go. Lubricate the end of the tip so it goes down a little bit easier for her, makes it a little bit less uncomfortable. So I would put the lubricant on about 3 to 4 inches on the tip. What I can also do is give her a glass of water so I can have that ready. And I also want to have an emesis basin ready too, just in case she does have a little bit of emesis at this point too, if it does hit her gag reflex. I'm just going to put this here for right now and just set my cup there for just a moment. And Miss Nazareth, what I'm going to have you do is I just want you to just try to relax, and I want you to take some deep breaths. What I'm going to do is just insert this tube in your nose. It's going to hit the back of your throat, and I'm going to give you some sips of water. I want you to just try to swallow when you feel it in the back of your throat, and just concentrate on your breathing and your swallowing, okay? Alright, it's almost done. Just going to have you take some sips of water here. Okay, good. Just keep swallowing. Alright. So, I'm going to have this just go back here. And what I'm going to do is once it gets down to where I had placed the tape before, sticking to my gloves here, I'm going to place this on her nose. Usually a little bit cleaner than that, and usually it would be down her throat and not down her back. And what I want to do now is just check to make sure that it's in her stomach and it didn't go into her lungs or anything like that, that it's in the correct place, because we want the feeding to go into her stomach. So what I want to do now is I want to check the placement. So I'm going to take 30 cc's of air, maybe between 25, 30 cc's of air. And I'm going to put it into her nasogastric tube. And I'm going to take my stethoscope and I'm going to listen for a whoosh sound. I want to hear like a bubble to make sure that it is in her stomach. So I'm just going to draw back on this here until I get 30 cc's of air to confirm the placement. Just going to go in her left lower quadrant here. Emesis space enough before, and I'm just going to listen to the whoosh sound, see if I can hear it, and insert at a pretty slow pace. I don't want to put all that air in her stomach fast, and I listen for that whoosh sound. If I hear it, I know that it is in her stomach. Just make sure I listen in that lower quadrant there. Up real quick. Okay. Now, the next thing that I want to do, since I know that it's in her stomach, is I just want to check for the residual to see what kind of stomach contents that I can draw back from her stomach. So at this point, I'm going to actually go back to her NG tube. And let's see here. I'm going to pull back until I feel resistance. And some people you may not feel any resistance at all. You may not get any residual. Some people you may get a lot. So as of right now, I start feeling residual or resistance at 10 cc's, let's say. So I'm gonna stop with a 10 cc's. I just want to put it in a cup over here because what I want to do, I just want to squirt it out, and I want to take one of these pH papers, and I want to just check the pH of her stomach contents. Typically you want the pH to be between 1 and 4. Typically the stomach content pH is going to look, or it's going to be between 1 and 4, and it's going to be a straw color. Sometimes it can be like a greenish brown color. It just depends on the person, but typically it's a straw color. Because this did come out of her stomach contents, I don't want her to be deprived of that, so I do want to give it back to her. So I'm going to just draw up the 10 cc's of the stomach content residual, and I'm going to be giving that back to Mrs. Nazareth. So I'm going to be putting that right back into her nasogastric tube the same way I took it out. Alright, and she'll get that right back into her stomach. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start her feed. So we're going to just be using the feeding pump. So I'm going to turn this on. Just wait for that to come up. Alright, and if I'm going to be setting my own settings, I would say just clear settings from whatever the previous settings were. And what the feed rate is going to be is 100 ml over 30 minutes. So since, excuse me, the rate is typically over an hour, what we would do is we would put 200 mLs over 1 hour. Since this says it's at 30 minutes, I would just double that. Now this already has a prime set up so for a flush system. So I'm just gonna prime this really quick before I get the feeding tube hooked up to her nasogastric tube. So I'm just gonna prime this really quick for Mrs. Nazareth. And flush the tube. Just because there's some air bubbles in here, I don't want those air bubbles to go into her stomach. Bad that the air bubbles go into her stomach, but there's just quite a few in here, so I'm just going to prime it really quick. Okay, so I just got them out, and what I'm going to do now, and I'm just going to prime the feed for just a moment. Alright, and now I'm going to just hook the feed up. So I'm going to say I'm done. Going to hook this up, and I'm going to set up the feed rate, 200 mLs per hour, and then I'm going to hit run. Alright, so since I obviously don't want it to go into her tube, we're just going to pretend it's going into her tube. Now, I'm going to just hold that for a minute because Mrs. Nazareth actually also has Colace that I want to administer to her. Now, in order to administer Colace, what I want to do is just pause the feed first. This does have the flush on it built in, so you can use the flush. I'm used to flushing manually. So what I'm going to do first is I pause the feed. I have sterile water here, so I dated and I initialed the sterile water, and I put the time that it was open because once it's open it's going to be contaminated. You don't want to use it again after that. After that 24 hours. So I'm going to put the sterile water in here because I'm going to draw up 30 cc's of the sterile water, and I'm going to just administer it into her feeding tube before I administer the Colace. So I'll put that in her NG tube. And then she's going to be getting 15 mLs of Colace. So we're going to be just pouring this. You can either pour this into a measuring cup, which I do have here, which automatically just measures it out, or I can pour it into a cup. I don't really want to waste it, so I'll just pour it into a measuring cup and I'll pull it up into the 15 mLs. Now, you can either pinch this off every time that you're stopping in between the flush and the medication administration, or it does have a little cap, so whichever you prefer, whichever is easiest for you. I'm pretty much capping it every time. So right now I'm going to administer the 15 mLs of the Colace. Alright, and then I would just recap it again. And then I would go ahead and I would take the sterile water and I would administer 30 cc's of the sterile water one more time to flush the NG tube again, because I don't want to leave that medicine in there. I want to make sure that it gets into our stomach and into our system. Alright, so we're done administering the Colace. What I'm going to do now is I would hook the feed back up. Typically I wouldn't have the line just lying there. I would have it wrapped up because it's going to be sterile. I would hook the feed back up and I would restart it. So I just hit run. I'm just gonna hit hold again for just a moment. And if for some reason Mrs. Nazareth wasn't tolerating the feed, I would know that because she would either have signs of like nausea or vomiting. She would be complaining of like stomach pain, or having issues with the actual tube itself, or she might have increased residuals when we're actually pulling back and trying to get the residual amounts from her. So that could indicate like delayed gastric emptying. So what I could do is, I don't necessarily have to stop the feed. I could just check her residuals. I could come back within like an hour or so and check them again. If I do need to, I could slow the rate, and then I could, if I were still getting the same results, I could check with the provider and see what they wanted to do and go from there, because I don't want to deprive her of the nutrients if she is still getting their nutrients, she's just being agitated by them. So what I'm going to do now is she's gotten the appropriate amount of the feed. So I'm just going to stop the feed because you just be pretending that it is still connected. I just had to set it down. So I'd stop the feed. I would disconnect it from Miss Nazareth, and I would just put the cap on the nasogastric tube. I would hang this up here for now. There are caps that you can put on this if it is going to be hanging up here. And since we're all done with the feeding pump, I'm just going to turn this off. You just hold the power button down. So since we're all done with the enteral feed, Mrs. Nazareth, your feeding is all done for right now. Is there anything else that I can get for you? Do you have any pain right now that I could get you medicine for? Are you comfortable? Okay, great. Well, let me know if you need anything. Here's your call bell. It's right by your side. All right, let me know. Thank you. I'll just wash my hands before I leave the room. And she should be good to go for now with her enteral feeding.